we had a conversation last week about curses, whether people are cursed, and I don't really want to get too much into that tonight, but that's a lesson in of itself. That will take a whole lot of time. But what I did do was I went on I started researching some information. We start talking about curses in the book of Galatians. It talks about Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law. And I think that's what we're talking about. When we start talking about curses, we're really talking about Christ redeeming us from the curse of the law. Christ said he didn't come to abolish the law, but he came to fulfill the law. And that's a whole lesson in of itself. And so we don't want to focus on that right now because really I wouldn't do it into justice if I, just made a few comments. But the curses is they were cursed according to the law because the law, they had to follow those rules. And when they didn't follow those rules, then they were cursed. And so there were 613 laws that they had to follow. They were really the do's and the don'ts. And the reason why God gave them those laws is that they had come out of Egypt, a place that worshiped idol gods. And so God said, okay, those things that you did, that you saw happening in Egypt, I don't want you to do these things. I don't want you worshiping idol gods, and I don't want you sleeping with your first cousin and your father's new wife and those kinds of things. And so God gave them a lot of different laws that they need to follow. And so in the New Testament, when Christ came, and I think there's a lot of confusion about when he says, we're no longer we're no longer cursed, is a better way to say it. But I think, and when we start studying it in more detail, we're going to have to separate curses from sin. When the question would be, if I sin, am I under a curse? And so we'll deal with that when the time comes. But the Bible doesn't say anything about when God spoke about the sins of the forefathers are revisited to the third and fourth generation. It doesn't say that that no longer applies. When we sin, and Kim and I was talking about this, Frankie Ray did a series on the blood. And we have it at home. I think, Kim, did you find that already? And so maybe once we get to those curses and blessings and all those kinds of things, we'll get more into detail about it. But even if, let's just say, even if we feel that we are redeemed from the curse, let's not even say the law. Let's just say we're redeemed from curses. Christ came to take that curse away from us. But as we sin, we allow ourselves to get back into the curse because we disobey God's commandments or God's, I don't know what word I'm trying to come up with. Whenever we disobey God's word, then we get out of favor with God. And so if you want to call that a curse, I guess you could. But I want to look at it in more detail and in a more intimate way when we start talking about it, how the sins of the forefathers are revisited to the third and fourth generation. And that still applies based on my research and based on what I've learned. And so we're not going to get too much into that. I had a couple of scriptures if you wanted to read them in your own time. We'll probably revisit these at another date. It talks about curses in John 9, 1 through 12. It talks about in Exodus 34.